All right, try it again. Assuming you're still here. Hello.
Must be that connection.
Joys of trying to do radio from an island. Oh. Okay, now do we have you guys?
Yes.
Maybe.
Okay. So, hi. this is this is Diane from the Red Whine and Darylyn, and we're on an island. And let me tell you something, it's a little difficult to try and do this, especially when we're sitting right next to each other. So, with that being said, I'm going to turn this over to Darylyn right now.
So tonight we have the pleasure of three U.S. Senate candidates running against Elizabeth Warren have agreed to speak to us. John Deaton is the candidate that has refused, and we're going to give him a little bit of our time at the very end.
And let's just state that John Deaton is the Mass GOP anointed candidate because I don't know, he's paying their rent or something. Who knows? I don't even know.
Apparently we're anointing criminals who shoot people and not sure if they really shoot people, but
we digress.
We digress. So tonight we're going to hear first from Ian Kane, and depending on how we're able to broadcast the other two segments, which we had to pre-record, where Aaron Pack and Nellis. And if for some reason we aren't able to do that, we're just going to beat up on John Deaton for the remaining time. And everybody, I want you to say hello, please, listeners, and welcome Ian Kane. Ian is a candidate for U.S. Senate against Elizabeth Warren. We want to remember we're running against Elizabeth Warren.
Yes.
Ian is a city councilor. He's been elected 5 times in Quincy. And we don't really know too much about cryptocurrency, so we'll probably skip that part. Ian, why don't you tell us a little bit about why you're deciding to run and why we should choose you against Elizabeth Warren, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thank you, Diane and Darylyn, for having me on the show. It's great to connect with you directly and to connect with your audience. So I appreciate you making time. This is a very important year. We have an opportunity to take out one of the most entrenched and hyper-partisan members of the U.S. Senate who ultimately is not representing Massachusetts. This is a person that we watched bestowed on Massachusetts back in 2012. And, we immediately, as soon as she came into the U.S. Senate representing Massachusetts, was interested seemingly in running for president. And, I think she's very much out of touch with the issues that matter most to people here. And I think she's out of touch with the average voter. And so from my perspective, there's a couple things we've got. I've been running across the state now since about 6 months and understanding what people care about and irrespective of their party affiliations, but trying to get to the heart of what would a voter want out of their next U.S. senator. And the issues are apparent. In Massachusetts, the number one issue on voters' minds, irrespective of party, is illegal immigration and the migrant issue, which has reared its head over the past year and a half. We have seen now that Massachusetts, the state, has absorbed both physical and financial burdens. We're spending billions of dollars on accepting illegal aliens into the state. And unfortunately, the state's got an issue that it needs to deal with in amending this right to shelter law. And, I think that the state is in need of a federal partner that is going to get to the heart of illegal immigration as a problem that hasn't been addressed from the federal government. There's been no comprehensive legislation passed. There was a sort of faulty piece of legislation that was put forward twice in the springtime. This is a bill that John Deaton said that he would have voted for, but it didn't get to the heart of the matter. It didn't close the border. It still allowed for 2 million more migrants to come over a year. It did not end the catch and release program or, reinstate the Remain in Mexico program. And so, there are issues that need to be dealt with. And you need a strong partner that understands not only how to collaborate, but understands how to represent people. Thank you for mentioning that. I've been a Quincy City Councilor for 9 years now, 5 elected terms. I'm currently the Quincy City Council president. And so, I've had the experience. I've been elected. I know how to legislate. I know how to work with different branches of government. And I think that experience certainly is relative and relatable to the 351 cities and towns that we have across the state. And bringing that perspective and experience to the federal government is needed.
So when we did a pre-record, one of our candidates said that Elizabeth Warren does not represent the majority of what people in Massachusetts want, but she actually represents a minority. Would you agree with that? And if she's elected, how can we say that she is not representing what the majority of Massachusetts wants?
Well, I can't actually tell you what Elizabeth Warren stands for because she's most often vocal about things that she's just against, and they're not about issues that pertain to people in this state, but they're about sensationalism. It's about whatever could be headline grabbing. So most recently, you hear about her trying to talk about the governance issues at Tesla and trying to evoke Elon Musk. Now, Elon Musk is in the news every day. Now, she talked about Apple and not being able to cross text between an Android and an Apple phone as you have different color text bubbles and whatnot. It's really just silly things. They're not real issues that people care about, as I said, starting with illegal immigration. And then the next is economic issues. So Massachusetts has had, even before she came into office, a housing issue. We have had a crisis of housing affordability in Massachusetts. Massachusetts is very interesting because at the same time Massachusetts is a very desirable place to live, you have on average since 2013 39,000 people leaving per year. And that's for three reasons: because of housing affordability, because of taxes, and because of high cost of healthcare.
And let me just ask you something about that, Ian. So
Sure.
when that amount of people leaving, close to 40,000 people, my question would be, are they leaving because they have a financial advantage and they can leave? Someone like myself, I have three children here, some of them are in high school, and I think I would like to leave, but I can't leave. So are we exporting our millionaires or people who are of financial affluence? Are we exporting them to benefit another state?
Yeah, I mean, so a couple things in there. One, I'm sorry to hear that you want to leave because we don't want you to leave. I don't want people to leave, and this is part of the reason why I want, why I'm running for this position is because we need a better vibe, right? There's got to be a better equation here that keeps people here. And so there's two parts of the economic, I guess, continuum of folks that are leaving. So you got younger people from 25 to 40 who are six-figure wage earners, okay, who are leaving and going to other places. Now they're mobile, they can move because they can afford to. And then because in Massachusetts, again, we talked about people leaving the state because of taxes. There was a recent ballot initiative over the last couple of years called the Millionaire's Tax, which has driven some of our wealthier residents away and to places like New Hampshire, Florida, Tennessee, to the Carolinas. And so, there's a number of factors, but we're losing the majority of or at least the largest portion of people that we're losing are the growth potential for our state, which are the young people, high wage earners.
And those are the people that, some of them work remote.
Yeah,
And
they could.
they can't. A lot of them can live wherever they want. A lot of the federal government under the Biden administration has been abdicated to a remote, I would say like not real accountable positions. But you've named illegal immigration, housing affordability. Where does censorship sit with you?
Well, I'm not. I mean, I'm not. I'm a firm believer in free speech, and I don't, believe in censorship for censorship's sake. And I think that we have that coming in various forms, and whether it's across public or private systems. I think most often we're hearing examples even where there's collaboration between public and private systems in order to censor different groups, right, and voices.
Well, I think one of the things are that I try to keep as much of an open mind as I can. My disclaimer is I support Trump's policies. There's a lot of things personally that I don't agree with, but he's not coming home to me or to my house. So how people say that you're not a Trump supporter in Massachusetts, I don't know how many, what the exact number is. We're known to be a Democratic state with Democratic senators, overrun, almost as subjects. but where do you stand? How do you want to attract the so-called Baker kind of progressive Republicans, the Trump supporters, and the independents? How do you plan to coalesce those three to support your platform and to explain what your platform hopes to accomplish?
Yeah, great question. So I think that Massachusetts might be viewed as a Democratic state because the majority of the legislative seats in the state house are held by Democrats. All of the constitutional offices are held by Democrats. All of the federal seats are held by Democrats. However, the voting population actually doesn't reflect that because you've got 64% of the voting electorate that is decidedly independent or unenrolled or not party affiliated, however you want to call it. So, I know that they're. I mean, hey, listen, we're in a presidential election year, and every presidential election year is now the most tense presidential election year. It's since 16 we have had, high energy, high anxiety, high hope, high fear that is presented, and coming into this election cycle this year, even before I contemplate running for this seat, I'm not excited about the presidential candidates at all. They're at the time being Biden and Donald Trump. One's almost 80, one is 80, one will be the oldest if elected serving president in office, who I think are similarly stuck in the past. And so the decision that I had personally made was not to vote for either. Then you walk into a situation where the Democrats basically trashed 14 million primary votes that took place in the Democratic primary and installed Kamala Harris to be their nominee. And I don't think that was right, and I'm certainly not fan of Kamala. So my position on the president election has not changed. There was no better character that was presented, but that's why from the outset why I'm running. We've got. I mean, Elizabeth Warren is certainly one of a number of people who are seasoned in the United States Congress, and it's time for the next generation of leadership. It's for us. It's about thinking about our state and thinking about our country through a more innovative lens. I'm a person that participates in and promotes the quote unquote digital economy and is always trying to, figure out how we can create more high wage, high paying tech jobs, whether they're technical or non-technical in this space, but still seeing opportunity to create those, pathways to prosperity for our young people. And I think, as I started to say about illegal immigration, this isn't an issue that is just that just one party of people cares about. This is an issue that people across the state, across political persuasions, cares about, because this is not being approached with a pragmatic lens. There's no common sense being used here. Now, from the federal level, we need to close the border, right? And so I've been the only U.S. Senate candidate seeking the Republican nomination to put out sound policy with a detailed plan around what we would do if we're fortunate to be elected to the U.S. Senate. And it starts with closing the border. It starts with penalizing sanctuary cities. It starts looking at the unlawful.
How would you penalize them, Ian? Can you go into just a tiny bit of detail on that?
Yeah, I mean, this would be legislation that I would propose, but we would work to, penalize jurisdictions that are designating themselves as sanctuary cities or states, and we would preclude areas from accessing federal funds.
So I had a question for you, kind of to deviate from that. You talk about bringing in a whole new generation of legislatures. What is your thoughts on term limits? We have the concern where you have people such as Joe Biden, Chuck Schumer, Mitch
Mm.
McConnell, to name a few, who have very much overstayed, in my opinion,
Yeah.
their usefulness as legislatures. What do you think? And quite frankly, we know the reason they keep running for reelection is because they're enriching themselves off the voters, confidence in them or whatnot. So, what are your thoughts on term limits?
I support a term limit. Certainly, I think that that's not a controversial subject for me. I think you'd be hard pressed to get something like that realistically passed in Congress, but I would certainly support the measure.
So, if you as an example, you moving forward, Senate, U.S. Senate's a 6-year term.
Mhm.
What do you think would be the limitation on that? 1 term, 2 terms?
I mean, I 2 terms would be fine. To be honest with you, I think it should be. I mean, 2 terms seems fine, but the way that I think about it, like I've been in the city council for, been my 5th term, and again, now we're crossing kind of places because I'm still a city councilor, and I wasn't really certain how much longer my tenure in the city council would last, but I've been working on a project in the city of Quincy for over 6 years that I'm working to get over the starting line. And that would signify for me an appropriate place to bow out, because it's a major infrastructure project in the city of Quincy. And so
Right.
I think if there are a couple of things, if there are motions or projects or certain legislative agenda that you're trying to achieve, and you've achieved it, then good on you. Let's pass the baton on to someone else that might have another plan. And you should be able to do that in 12 years. I mean, 12 years is a long time, and
Right.
that's the amount of time that Elizabeth Warren has been in this seat. And I can't fathom that she has done anything remarkable for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts outside of continue to grow her own celebrity status.
And I always find it curious that that someone who's been in office for so long, what actually has she brought back to Massachusetts?
I mean, there's a document that she had put out that outlines certain funding, that she's brought back to the state, but it's not through any particular concerted effort that was led by her. And
I'm
most of
pretty sure those
those,
are just the earmarks that they the little
ear,
payouts that they get for
yeah,
voting for.
it's earmarks, and it's also, I mean, in earmarks that are probably contained in large omnibus bills. So the Inflation Reduction Act, the infrastructure bill, those are things that were extraordinarily high dollar measures that have probably contributed to our inflation, and of course the bloat within the federal government that needs to be taken care of.
And when they look at it with a political lens, they say, I'm bringing this money to the state of Massachusetts. And what they're not realizing is that it's our money
Well, you
in the
should look
first
at it.
place.
You should look at it as a return on investment, because we did a calculation a couple months ago, and I want to say, I forget what the number we used on average. Let's say on average somebody spent $100,000 in or paid $100,000 in federal taxes over the period 12-year period by which she says that she's brought $50 billion back. Your return on investment is about, if that's divided into the population of Massachusetts, then your return on investment is about 0.0003%.
Right. And I guess one question I have is, as an independent voter, for example, that has both, right leanings, left leanings, that what would make you stand out for someone that would be completely independent, that is voting on a candidate based on, what they feel most aligns with them? How do you attract those type of voters?
Hopefully, I mean, because there is, the reality is not lost on me that if we get through the primary, I think that one of the most difficult tasks will be in breaking the spell that people are under. I think people are under a spell. I think that people, would prefer not to understand the full truth sometimes. And what I kind of perceive as Democrats portraying a little more in the concept of happy thoughts as opposed to reality. And sort of there are a lot of issues that the Democrats put forward that I believe are more smoke screens to cover the actual issues that we're not fixing, like illegal immigration and cost of living in the economy, which makes a certain group of people happy. But I think, what I'm trying to do is bring in that common sense, which I think people are looking for.
And when
Because,
you say common sense, Ian, I think critical thinking skills. And
yeah,
I think you hit the point on emotion. There's a lot of people who do. The FBI has even done studies on it. Theory 1 and Theory 2, and it's a way to try to convince propaganda, however, whatever you want to call it, to influence people in a certain way. And we certainly have been using emotion, women's rights, abortion, which is more of an emotional platform. And when someone just stands around and says, housing is bad, we should do something about it. I mean, that's been going on here in Massachusetts in the state Senate, since 2015, and no one's done anything about it. But now that illegals are here, all of a sudden, we are displacing American citizens, school children that are trying to get an education with illegals. And yes, we do have a certain amount of sympathy for them, but at the same time, where do you draw the line between, I don't want to say us and them, but where do you draw the line between citizen and non-citizen and how we share the prosperity?
Well, what do we have rules for? You know what I mean? Why do we have laws if we're just going to allow particular groups of people not to abide by them? I don't understand that. That's common sense to me.
It is
What the? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I mean that's first and foremost. It's. I mean the thoughts that came to mind when you were just talking is we gotta get our house in order. We need to make sure that we're protecting our border and our safety and security of the United States of America. I think that there are anecdotally we're hearing a lot of different cases of unvetted people who are coming through illegally, who are not doing the right thing, who have been caught in certain criminal situations. And there was even a month or two back, there was a network of potential ISIS affiliates, I believe. And so, so what are we doing here? Why are we just carte blanche letting people come into the country?
I think we know that. Don't we know that answer though?
Well, I think there's a couple of, but there's a couple of different. I mean, there's a difference between the answer to that and what people believe, right?
Of course.
Right, and
Of course,
I think
because
and both could be true.
If we truly wanted to diversify the American population, there's a way to do it, and it's called a diversity visa. And we only allow 55,000 people to come into the United States legally, city visa, and the requirements are that you have an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree, or you have a documented skill. So if we truly wanted to be diverse, in my humble opinion, we would increase that to 300,000 visas a day. But how do you think a candidate should be judged? Do you believe that they should be judged on their past, their character, their experience, what they've already given to their community?
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you said community. I've been thinking about community a lot because, in this Republican primary, we've got 3 different candidates. I'm the only Massachusetts native. Okay. I'm from here. I'm a 4th generation Quincy kid. My great grandparents on my mother's side were the first of each of them. On my we're the first to live in Quincy, and we're part of the fabric here. I've been a sitting member of the city council. I founded community organizations. I work collaboratively across the city, and I'm part of the business community in Massachusetts. The other 2 opponents that I'm running against, one of them just took residence in Massachusetts in January. And isn't tied to the community, is not tied to any fabric, has not been demonstrated, to be a part of any community here in Massachusetts. And I can't tell you much about Bob, but I know he's not from Massachusetts originally. And that's how I feel about Elizabeth Warren, is that I don't see her as a part of any community. Is she ingrained in her Cambridge community? I know that she doesn't pop through in Quincy and talk to people here. That was one of the things that I brought up months ago. It said, I've been in the city council for 9 years, and it's not like she checks in with us. I get a calendar every year from her office. I think all of us do. But she doesn't check in on the grassroots issues, what's going on. Like how can we work collaboratively? And that's
So
what
will you do that, Ian? If you are elected, would you be checking in with your local elected officials? And should people expect that?
You have to, because if you're not tying all the pieces together between the local leaders, the state leaders, and then bringing that knowledge to the federal government, then I don't know what you're doing. Really, I have no idea.
So in Congress, you want to be part of Congress, and they carry the power of the purse, which is the ability to tax and spend public money for a national government. So what what programs would you want to fund, and what programs would you, I don't want to say defund, but what programs would you find to be less worthy?
So this is where, you can
So
certainly
what would
find
you
me.
want to fund with the power of the purse if you had the ability to for a national government? Would you be opposed to getting rid of the Department of Education? I think that's a Trump agenda. We've asked that to our other two candidates, and let that be relegated to the states. Or
Yeah,
would you
listen,
prefer?
that's certainly a place where you're going to find me in alignment with President Trump is in looking at the outsized bureaucracy and regulatory overreach, and how can we cut back. And Department of Education is one of these where I think there's some $800 billion that flows through that system. And I mean, can you tell me what it does? How does that benefit local school systems? Because I know that we fund our school system in Quincy off our taxpayers, and we have a great school system at that. And I don't. $800 billion is an incredible amount of money that is potentially transformative for probably system countrywide education and disparate outcomes that we talk about. We talk about this concept of DE&I, which I think is a big promotion out of that arm. And I think it's nonsense, because we're not really increasing or making better the outcomes of some of the more poor communities in America. So what do I want to fund? I want to. One of the things that I think about pretty often is, how can we create alternative pathways to prosperity for our young people instead of guiding them to college or university? When people can make that decision to go to college and university, that's within. But if college and university isn't right, or somebody does not, that's not the right path for them. There are thousands of open jobs in cybersecurity and fiber technology and in the trades across our country. And we need people to be trained in these. And this is the future. This is part of this digital economy. This is, the future of AI, blockchain, machine learning, all of this. And there's opportunities to guide people through short-term training programs that could allow them to live quite reasonable lives that would meet cost of living.
So I had a quick question, because this has been a topic of conversation. And I didn't bring it up to the other two gentlemen. I'm sure they'll have an opportunity to answer it. But what are your thoughts on the impact of out-of-state college students, and the impact that they have on state, federal, and local elections in the state, when they don't have a stake in the state? They vote, they are and then basically they leave. There's no real major follow-up of reciprocal to see if they're voting absentee as well as voting in the state that they're residing in, because we all know, in order to vote, you U.S. citizen, most of the state laws say you have to be a resident of the state in order to vote in the state. Yet, for college students, this always seems to have been very lackadaisical. It's not followed up upon. So, what are your thoughts of college students and the impacts that they have on state and federal elections?
So I think, what I mean, and tell me if you think I'm wrong, but I want to think through this with you. Is that, are you basically saying that no temporary resident should be able to vote in the state that they're a temporary resident?
In college,
Because
yes,
so
yes.
only if they're in college. So if you're an apartment renter in XYZ city or town,
No, only
and
if you are specifically a resident, a temporary resident in college.
okay,
Because if you're in college and you're living at the school, you are using the school as your permanent address.
yeah.
Someone that does not have a state of, say, Massachusetts driver's license, because they're not considered a permanent resident, if that makes sense. Someone who, when they graduate college after 4 years, just moves out of the state, but yet they have impacted every level of voting in the state.
But they also might live in the state longer than a temporary resident in an apartment, and they could have similar impacts. I understand the volume that you're talking about, though. I understand the volume. And I'm just thinking also, I was a grad student. The only 2 years I've ever lived outside of Massachusetts, I went to grad school in North Carolina. And I had my license, I had my car registration. I rented an apartment, and I was registered to vote, and I voted down there. So I don't know how that changes because I was a grad student. I'm still 18 years old. I'm an adult. I was 30. It was 30 or something at the time. But I appreciate the thought. I'm just trying to. Where do you draw the line? And I think that would be difficult to do.
I think that the one of the questions, that has come up is, a lot of students don't vote in the state they go to college in because they vote absentee ballot in the state that they're actually um, a stakeholder in, or the parents are stakeholders in, if that makes sense.
No, I
The
think it
whole
does.
point,
And I
the
just,
whole point of of being able to vote absentee ballot is if you are a resident of that town and you get the ballot sent to you, because again, absentee ballot has far more stricter guidelines than being a temporary resident that you can go and vote same day registration or whatnot for.
yeah. Hey, listen,
I'm speaking because I've seen, because I'm a poll monitor, and I've seen many times during these state and federal elections, it's a top 3 tier vote. Any
mhm.
of the local elections, they don't touch. So they're specifically, and sometimes they don't even, do anything that has anything to do with the state. They just target the federal seats because they're
Well,
impacting the federal seats.
that's also local. That's generally how local elections go anyway. There's such a difference between a municipal, state, and a federal voter.
Yeah. I
And
mean, I know that. I mean, I'm a 20-year public official, so I know
yeah,
exactly
yeah.
what you speak of. So.
What I was thinking of is when there's so many colleges that are concentrated in one particular area,
Mm.
and especially in an area which is, you say more Republican voters, but typically, Democrats are elected. There's such an influx of out of state kids or whatever that I'm not going to sugarcoat it, that are most likely told by the school to vote this or that way. I personally don't think anybody should vote till you have a mortgage or a rent or a career or so. I don't know, like some
Huh.
responsibility where you have to have accountability to somebody or something. But that's hyperbole, of course.
Yes.
But so I want to ask you this, and I do appreciate that you want to protect the rights of individuals, and that is one of the things of what a U.S. senator does: is they protect the rights of individual states and safeguard minority opinions, and basically a system of government that's designed to give a greater power to the national government. So, you know, kind of. We are see a big thing, and you said DEI. I say
Mm.
DIE because if we truly talked about diversity, that's the willingness to listen to someone that you typically wouldn't listen to. And I just feel when we're talking about protecting the rights of individuals and safeguarding minority opinions, we are somehow with DEI victimizing minorities. How do you? How are your leanings towards that? Like, I love that you say you want to do more educating, but I feel like somebody like Warren is more in the victim business.
Oh, absolutely. And so listen, and I know that this is like public information. I've been getting grief about it, but I was originally a Republican. I was unenrolled. I was a Democrat for 3 years, unenrolled, and now I'm a Republican again. And this is one of
Welcome
the main.
back.
Thank you, thank you. This is one of the main reasons why I leave the Democratic Party is because of the focus on what I think is this nonsense. And I think that there are ways to look at how services in whatever respective realm are people are being prevented from using, but this blanket concept of making an assumption that a particular group of people does means a certain or is trying to diminish the abilities or capabilities of a certain group of people, and therefore should have this pass and pathway to this place. I just don't agree with. And I have people that I've come across in as being a public servant who I'm a minority. My father is black, my mother is white, and so I'm a shade of brown, or my mother used to call me golden. But but I have people that have tried to use my minority identity things against me to see their outcomes, and so that's crazy. just because I don't know what people believe, or, I understand that there's suggestions about how people are in this world, but it's part of, I think we started to address it a little bit earlier, which is that people are under this spell. And I think that there is generally, and this is irrespective of the party you belong, there's a lot of manipulation that takes place. And this is one of those issues that gets used against people, and they feel pressured to have to give into it. And I certainly don't. This
Well,
was.
here's what I don't like, right? Is someone will say and judge me or Diane or whoever, especially when I ran for Senate in 2022, that I was a certain way, but they didn't know anything. Like, I have mixed race family members. I have there's members of protected classes in my family, and people assume because I'm Republican because I believe in individual responsibility,
Hmm.
individual
Hmm.
liberties, which means the Constitution, and fiscal conservatism. And I think sometimes people in Massachusetts are so dead set on things that don't, like, I hated to say it, but an abortion issue, or one specific policy issue that stands out for the rest. Say as people say that you don't support Trump so that they to try to just distract, and at the same time, I support his policies,
Yeah.
and we're supposed to keep an open mind. So, could you just, in like less than a minute, could you defend your position of people saying that you don't support Trump because you sound like an American first candidate to me? So how do you reconcile that with Trump supporters and Baker Republicans?
Yeah, I mean, listen. I've had a lot of conversations with people, and I certainly respect anyone's desire to support President Trump in this election. And what I ask for is the same respect in my not choosing to vote for him. That's not that I won't support his policies. I'm going, again, I hearken it back to Elizabeth Warren being a person that doesn't work well in this role. She's not good at this job. She does not have relationships, and therefore does not move legislation. So I need to figure out how to work with anyone. And I'm not interested necessarily in a Kamala Harris White House by any means, but I still have to figure out if that does happen, how to work with them. I can't go down there and be like Elizabeth Warren and say, I can't do my job because the right president didn't get elected. That's
So
derelict of
what
my
so
duty.
what do you
I'm
say? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay.
ADD me.
Yeah.
Um, but so how do you defend? I mean, we definitely don't want a Kamala Harris. Sorry, I lost my whole train of thought there. We don't want it. We don't want a Kamala Harris. So is a non-vote for a Republican truly a vote for a Democrat?
I mean, I don't think so. I think if we were in a different state, we could have a different conversation about that. But I still know where we live in Massachusetts, and again, my goal, the job that I'm trying to do right now in campaigning for the Republican nomination is displace Elizabeth Warren. And so I
Exactly.
think that, and those missions are two different things.
Well, and we can always hold out. I mean, JD Vance didn't he actually said nasty things about Trump until he met him, and I think until you actually meet a person and know their soul, I like I said, I try not to judge. He's not coming home to me,
Yeah.
but if you
But
can't
again,
give me,
I'm not documented as anti or pro Trump, right? I
well,
probably can't
other people are
want to
using are saying
characterize
that
me. Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah. That's because,
exactly, yes.
yeah, that's because that's what they need. You know what I mean? And that's fine. I'm running on a person that can deliver. I've got experience, and I can solve problems, and I can get things done. I'm from, you know what
Tell
I
us
mean?
about that, Ian. Tell us about what problems you've solved and what you hope to get done by what means. And you only have a minute. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I'm going to go back to the original issues that we talked about because those are the most important, and that's the agenda that we put together on the crisis at our border, which Massachusetts is now a border state. So that's the number one thing that I'm going to give attention to when we get, if we're fortunate to get down into Washington, because this is a big deal. This is about safety and security for America and also for our state. Okay, so but just in the past, in my 9 years, I've certainly done a considerable lot. I've led development of infrastructure projects. We, in the grassroots stuff in Quincy, you guys get local stuff, right? It's streets, trees, and sidewalks, and then making financial decisions. I've been a leader for fiscal responsibility. We've had huge spending appropriations, a $475 million pension obligation bond, $120 million Quincy College building, all that I voted no because I didn't think that they were financially prudent. We've focused a lot on improving infrastructure in the city, including the roadways and the underground sewer and water mains. And, I come from the energy industry too. So I take not only this holistic look at the physical infrastructure that needs replacement, the bridges, the streets, the roads, the sidewalks, et cetera, but the digital infrastructure and making sure that we are set up to be that beacon, the continued beacon for innovation for the world, right? And we're not left behind.
Excellent. So if you could please let people know where to find information on your campaign, and also where they can find you online to get more information.
Yep,
That would
absolutely.
be great.
So our website is cainforus.com. It's CAINFORUS.com. And through there, you can find me on various social media. So we're always happy to connect. And hey, we've got tomorrow marks 1 week till September 3rd, Tuesday, September 3rd, which is the day of the primary. So, I just want to be clear that, I feel confident that I am the number one candidate that has a chance of taking on Elizabeth Warren. And I appreciate your consideration for the vote. In fact, I ask you to check out, we had a debate on WBZ that was broadcast just last weekend or 2 weekends ago. And I asked you to look that up on YouTube. Check it out. You can see the stark differences between us as candidates.
And Ian, do you have a fundraiser coming up, or was that yesterday?
We have a couple. We've got one in Dennis this week on Wednesday, and we've got another one in Taunton on Thursday. The one in Dennis is at a family friend's house. They're kind enough to get a group of people together. And the one on Thursday in Taunton is at the Polish American Citizens Club. So if you're in the area, please stop by. And if I wasn't clear before, by the way, I humbly ask for your vote. That is the most important part of this. So you always have to ask for the vote.
I appreciate that. That's absolutely true. We agree with that.
So thank you very much for your time spending with us tonight. And we wish you much luck on the second or third.
It's the third. Yeah, third. That's the third. Yeah.
I'm just trying. I can't believe Labor Day is just like coming up that fast.
I know.
So we do wish you well in the election, and thank you so much for coming on the Red Whine.
Thank you for having
We hope
me.
you'll come back.
Yes,
I'd be happy
yes.
to. This was great. I really enjoyed the discussion. I appreciate you having me.
All right. Thank you,
Great.
Ian.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Take care.
Thank you.
Well, are we going to go to a break, Rick? Or are we going straight into talking a
It's your
little
show.
bit?
Your show. You want to break? We can take a break.
Well, you're the boss, man. We're used to
you're-
you. You know what? You have
Hey,
submissive women here.
You have submissive women here. Did you just say that you have submissive women here?
Yeah. Well, first of all, my pocket bolshometer just pegged and broke. No, that is no. But no, you guys don't normally take breaks. But if you want a break, I already have one ready to go, so we can take one.
Let's take a little break so we can try to figure out how we're going to possibly broadcast the other two candidates. If we're going to have some technical difficulties with that, we will add it onto our post when we post the show. So yeah, let's take us to a break. Oh, I love our commercials.
We'll be right back.
Don't you bleed, there ain't no stop for me. Shadow I can't see.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
All right, so audio side, we are completely muted. They can still hear you guys on the video side. The only one I seem to have is the first cut, I think. Let me do this because I have both of them muted right now because I didn't want anything to start queuing up while you guys were talking to him. But let me do this. See if I've lost my mind or not. Why are you not unmuted?
Yeah, well, our minds are already gone. So.
Yeah, I didn't mean to say. So I sent you Bobby Tonellis, but I didn't send you Aaron Packard. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because Antonellis was the one that was like 1 Broadway 2 or something like that. That's just the way the voice went. We were in the middle of a massive thunderstorm when that whole thing happened. It's like 4-hour thunderstorm, wasn't it?
Oh.
Which is nothing to what you faced.
Wait, you said he's what too?
Antonellis is 1 Broadway 2.
Okay.
And Packard is 1 Broadway.
All right, so you just
No.
have Packard, Rick.
No, they're both.
Hello, everybody,
they're
and
both
Diana. I
the
want to
same, that's
introduce
what
you
I'm trying
to
to
our
say.
next candidate for U.S. Senate, running against Elizabeth Warren, is Aaron Packard.
Okay, so
And-
that's
So maybe they're not the same. Hang on. But now I can't get the other one to unmute. What is it doing?
Okay, let's see. 1 Broadway was Aaron. Just for well, Aaron? Where are you from? Sorry. Aaron is 1 Broadway. Let's see what 1 Broadway 2 is.
The other one's 1 Broadway 2.
Hello, everybody, and Diana. I want to introduce you to our next candidate for U.S. Senate, running against Elizabeth Warren, is Aaron Packard. Wait, isn't 1 Broadway Aaron? Just for
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're both the same name.
So Elizabeth Warren in a yes.
Your money, just like I do.
That's Aaron. Let me see. I'm just asking now. So it is Monday.
Running against Elizabeth Warren, who's the present incumbent for the state of Massachusetts. And I was wondering, we can collect.
We can play Bob. That's Bob.
What's the under?
1 Broadway 2-2.
1 Broadway
I'm
2Q.
going to send it to her right now.
She's sending it back.
Who is Kimmis?
Yeah, the problem is I don't have time to convert it and be able to play it. So you guys might as well just play that. Now that you know which one's which, just cue it up to the starting point and you can play it from your phone.
Okay.
All right.
And then, but you're playing, you have Aaron's. You're going to play that or no?
Yeah, I can play Aaron's.
Okay. It's painful.
Dude, I just mute myself when you guys have guests because I felt like yelling at the goo that was like, it doesn't matter if I vote for Trump because I'm in a no shit. 'Cause we need to win the fucking popular vote at this point too.
You
So,
have no
anyway.
idea. He's the top one of 3.
Which
That
one?
we-
Well, wait, who are you talking about, Rick, that you're talking about?
The one that you guys just had on that was
Yes.
like, it
Oh,
doesn't
Ian?
matter if I vote for Trump or not. And I'm like, yes, it does. Because
the
even
popular
even if we manage to win the electoral college and we don't win the popular vote, they're still gonna riot.
Yeah, just make sure you don't play that in the background.
No, I'm just trying to figure out who it is right now. That's Bob.
Yeah, this was just so painful. It's the present incumbent.
By the way, you for the record, they can still hear you guys on the video.
Oh, fuck my life. Excuse my French.
Shit, what's the video?
The video feed. Remember, we have 3 feeds running right now:
Where's the video going to?
Facebook and X
I didn't add
and
it.
Rumble and YouTube.
Because we didn't get any of that. We kept cutting out on video and audio, wherever. It was painful because we had to keep going back to repeat what we were saying. So I don't know if it was actually broadcast that part or not, but it's almost painful to listen to because of the storms that are happening here. So I don't know if that was how we were able to, how if that was cut up or broadcast or not.
No,
But it's painful. It's painful for us because we keep cutting out. There's like a thunder and lightning storm going on here. So with Bob Antonellis and with Aaron Packard, we kept cutting out, and we cut out a couple of times with Ian, but it was more painful on the recording because we're on an island.
Well, that's why I was pointing out that you're live and might want to explain a little bit more so people weren't thinking you were down in the candidates.
Oh God, no, no, God, no. We are here to promote all Republican candidates equally, to give them equal time. And unfortunately, candidate John Deaton decided that he didn't want to be heard. He didn't want the people to hear what he had to say. And apparently he thinks that he, is above other people by being the anointed GOP candidate. But no, by no means. I meant technically on our side, it was a nightmare because we kept cutting out. So
Coming back.
We are back, and as you know, we have had a crazy day on our island and everything. So what we wanted to do is to run our interview that we pre-recorded earlier with Aaron Packard. I think, Rick, you have that, correct?
I think that's the one I have. Yeah.
All
Okay.
right, and I apologize if there's any like cutouts. Like I said, we're on an island and there's a electrical storm going on here, so the poor transmission. I apologize for. There's not much we can do about it.
You guys ever notice that when you're in the same place at the same time, bad things happen?
Yes, Diane's had 3 surgeries because of her ankle, and I won't let her do anything. She's like in bubble wrap here. I feel totally responsible. Like, if anything happens to you, like, I'm the one that's gonna get blamed for the bad juju.
All right, and here is the interview starting now.
Hello, everybody. And Diana, I want to introduce you to our next candidate for U.S. Senate running against Elizabeth Warren is Aaron Packard. Aaron Packard is from Fitchburg, which is northern central Mass, close to Worcester. So, Aaron, you want to tell us a little bit about your campaign, and you're a write-in candidate. If you can explain to our listeners what that means.
Okay, no problem. Well, being a write-in campaign, I fell just short of the 10,000 signatures needed to make it onto the ballot. I got 8,200, so it's not too shabby. My team fell apart. I don't celebrate mediocrity, but I do what God tells me to do, and it was to keep going. My platform is definitely America First, Massachusetts, you name it. My lineage dates way back, all the way to the roots of the first Packard of 1638. And real quick, somebody I would call uncle today answered the Lexington alarm and, fought for the liberties and freedoms that we have today. So I can't, just forsake that and let it go. It's in the DNA. Now,
well, it's funny you say that about the DNA. Di, don't you think so?
Seriously.
With Elizabeth Warren and her DNA.
Oh God, yes.
Saying that,
Yeah, Hiawatha.
right. So you mentioned that you don't believe that the majority is represented fairly in Massachusetts. And I'd like you to
No.
explain that, because Warren was elected. So
That's correct. She was elected, quote unquote, plucked out of obscurity and installed by the Democrat Party because of her liberal ways. Now, the majority of Massachusetts is the working class. And being a working man myself, I work 5-6 days a week, 40 plus hours. I do the best that I can to survive. And I understand all walks of life because I work in the restaurant industry where I'm fully interactive with every type of person you can imagine, from left to right. And, it's understanding the wants and needs of everybody, including myself. So I don't want to take anybody's money. I want you to keep your money just like I do.
well, we know that the Congress is where we make laws.
Right.
So what is your agenda? What laws or policies would be your platform? And do you think that we have the checks and balances that we need in the Senate right now?
We absolutely do not have checks and balances in the Senate. There are way too many people on the take of either foreign money or hush money or you name it. It's just their voting records prove it. Now, it's just insane how crazy it is. And, everybody refers to the fakes as rhinos. That just, being that fact, it implicates that they're Republican. Rhino, the Republican in name only. They're not even Republicans. It's insane. My platform is veterans and military get first dibs on everything before illegal aliens. Saving our children and protecting them from kidnapping, trafficking, pedophilia, you name it. You know,
Well,
I'm
I think
a big
what
fan of
Aaron,
Anna Paulina Luna.
Aaron, I think what the question is how you define the voters of Massachusetts and who the majority is. Now we know, looking at the numbers, the majority of voters in Massachusetts are unenrolled. So what are
Right.
you doing to attract the unenrolled voters to your platform?
Unenrolled and voters are very skeptical of the underhanded deeds, not words, and everybody's been fooled by the words. They say, you know, the people that are supposedly elected say they're going to do one thing and turn around and do another. I want truth and justice, you know, and thankfully our Supreme Court has, for the most part, trying to battle that the best that they can. So, you know, that it really is truth. You are what you represent, period. The truth comes out in the wash, and it's been way too long for it to come out. I mean, look at us, 3-4 years later. Come on.
Okay, so I guess if I, for an example, I'm an independent unenrolled voter for either party.
Okay.
And I'm hearing Elizabeth Warren make her claims that we're going to, fix banking. She's jumping on the bandwagon for Kamala Harris's unrealized gains. So what I'm saying is, what can you do to convince someone like me to vote for you? And what will you do for me as an unenrolled voter that might not necessarily like what Harris is saying and like what Elizabeth Warren is saying? What are you going to bring to Congress?
Okay.
If elected.
Right. So, like I said, I work in a small business. I work in a small cafe, if you will. I'm a restaurant, do-it-all kind of guy. So, being around the small businesses, they're getting taxed and brutalized into barely making a living. They have to raise their prices to go along with the product prices coming in. So one of my personal things is to substantially decrease payroll tax, if not eliminate it, because those small businesses are getting taxed just to have employees, never mind the products they're getting taxed on and their income they're getting taxed on, the property they're getting taxed on. So, you know, the small businesses are a mainstream of what America was built on.
Right. So you're basically saying about reducing the payroll taxes, possibly regulations for other subsidiary taxes that small business has to pay out. One big impact, I think, too, is every single employee having to pay into the sick bank for the state of Massachusetts, and then the state of Massachusetts is who actually decides who gets the money. So I think it's employers are overburdened by regulations and taxes. So, and that's in Massachusetts. So this is nationwide. So obviously we know different states have different
Right.
issues. So going forth as a senator, what type of regulations would you like to decrease, or what specifically? I mean, because payroll taxes, obviously we know part of payroll taxes fund Social Security, Medicare, which we know are going to completely run out of money. So what would you recommend for constituents?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No problem.
The Social Security tax, I mean, we get Social Security taken out of our paychecks all the time. And, you know, that accumulates all over the years. And then our seniors are only getting, you know, $1,300, maybe $1,500 a month to live. Well, you have to protect that Social Security. 2 is no tax on the Social Security. And my belief is that we should even increase that Social Security income back to the seniors who have paid into it all their lives, whether they've been, independently wealthy or small business or just working class like myself. You're trying to survive off of $1,300 a month. It's not doable. It really isn't. I mean, I barely survive off of the income I make. $1,300 a month. You can't. It's nearly impossible.
So I think what an issue that they've never fixed, and perhaps this is something you bring forth in your campaign, but a lot of people worked hard. They retired based on what their Social Security was. We've had all the inflation that's hit. So people of today who are receiving Social Security are receiving far more than what they actually contributed. So that's why the money is running out. What would you propose bringing forth for people that are going to be retiring in the next 30 years when we're hearing that Social Security is going to be toast?
Right. Well, you've heard the saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. Well, that's what's happening, is that they're giving all the benefits to illegal aliens and shipping money out to every other entity across the world versus taking care of the population that has built this country. And if you keep taxing the working class, I mean, you can even go back to why we had the revolution anyway. The tax difference is a lot different over 250 years later, but it's still a relevant point, is that you're overtaxing for what? So we can keep working. It is basically slave labor. So in order to keep the money and the growth within America, is you promote American-made products. You have interstate commerce before overseas. You have to start rebuilding the foundation of saving the farms, saving the working class, and keeping the money within the United States and not sending it off to other countries just for the sake of relations. Humanitarian aid is great, but that has to have an eagle eye on it.
And I think you're saying more oversight of obviously government spending. Are you aware of any knowledge that they took money supposedly from Social Security to fund all the illegal immigrants that have come over?
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, the Social Security benefits are being given to illegal aliens first. They're supplementing all the immigrants that are coming across the border. Not all of them are bad or evil, but the majority of them coming over are military aged and terrorists. So,
But Aaron, this is by design. This wasn't an accident.
oh yeah, absolutely by design.
So my question is, what powers does Congress have that you can influence, like you said, to lower taxes and to have veterans first? Specifically, how do you? Yes,
absolutely, deportation now of all illegal immigrants. Go back outside the borders and come in the correct way. Knock on the door and go through the process properly. And then, you know how many immigrants have paid out the ass, excuse my language, of thousands of dollars to become legal citizens or legal residents, for that matter. They're just as mad as we are, who were born in this country. I mean, I'm a veteran. I served to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States and the people who reside in this country. And we're getting the shaft because all of our hard-earned money is being given away to people who did not earn it.
So Congress carries the power of the purse.
Correct.
And that's the ability to tax and spend the people's money. So the only way to shut this off for the national government would be to stop funding it. So how would you influence Congress to stop funding this? By which means would you do that as a U.S. Senator?
Well, bill comes up. My vote is no, stop. No, stop. It goes back to the citizens who give in to the funding. Why are you taking money to fund, XYZ project when we have roads here? Like, for example, Fitchburg, Massachusetts is the second hilliest city in the country next to San Francisco. The topography is ridiculous. Do you think we get funding for roads and to regrade the streets? No, we don't. We get, barely a little slice. And these people in Congress are getting little pieces of, okay, we'll give you, say, for example, we'll give you $100 for every million that we get to go into your plan to help appease the people. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
So are you saying that you would try as a U.S. Senator to introduce some sort of educational program to educate the public so that they would be more aware?
Oh, yeah. In simple terms, I mean, you have, 3,000 pages of a stupid bill of word salad. You have to break it on down. Just like Thomas Jefferson said that, these bills need to be written by farmers and understood by farmers. Just the vernacular, the vocabulary has to be understood by the common people. The overeducated, a college degree doesn't mean shit unless you apply the knowledge and principles that have found it.
So wait, you're saying that a college education doesn't mean anything if what?
Okay, a college education is great. I'm all for academics, but the working class people built this country, and it will continue to build the country if you let them have their piece of the pie. Now, the piece of the pie is being given away to other entities like non-elected officials in too many agencies. Look what Argentina did.
Well, let's stick in the United States. Let's try to stick to Elizabeth Warren in your campaign.
Right, examples.
So
yes, please.
Tell me what it is or what policies or what votes of Elizabeth Warren that you reject or that you would change.
Okay, yeah, I reject. There's spying on Americans. She voted for. And she didn't want to have that bill knocked down.
Which bill is that?
They were using the eavesdropping and spying on everyday Americans.
Are you talking about the Patriot Act, Aaron?
Yes, similar to that. I'm sorry, I don't have the sheet in front of me right at the moment.
Okay, so what other policies or what other decisions in your mind are questionable, and why is Elizabeth Warren bad for Massachusetts and the U.S. Senate, and why are you the better choice?
Okay. Elizabeth Warren, like I said from the beginning, she was installed. Plucked from obscurity. She came from Oklahoma, went to New Jersey, Rutgers, and then got a job at Harvard. One class, and then she ran for office, and it was appealing the sob story of the working class and trying to give these little breadcrumbs to us working class. When she herself has gotten millions of kickbacks on funding Ukraine government, not the Ukraine people, Ukraine government.
When you say that, I'm assuming that you have a document to reference, or
I do. There was a top 10 list of different congressional people, senators and House representatives that were getting kickbacks. You know, she was on the list for like $47 million that she received in money in return, along with the old Governor Mitt Romney, etc. And even now, you know, she's trying to be against Israel, but yet she's taking money from Israel backers. It's too much shady. There's no transparency on how she is a multi-millionaire crying out for being working class protector when we have all the legitimate working class people from state to state not seeing those results.
So who are Elizabeth Warren's who's her electorate?
Who's her electorate? Or basically, okay, for example, she the tuition, college tuition, getting free tuition. They promoted this woman who received her college tuition payback, who makes, you know, $300,000, and they knocked off $100,000 of a college loan that she had. If you take out a loan, you're agreeing to pay it back. Now, the knowledge has to be put out there for anybody wanting a further education after they graduate high school. They want to go on to college. They have to be educated in, this is what you're doing. You are responsible for paying X amount of dollars back.
All right, but the question is who's her electorate? Who's electing Elizabeth Warren if you don't believe that she represents the majority of Massachusetts, and how are you going to sway people to vote for you?
I grew up on the streets. She was claiming, you know, you look on a website, she was precariously on the edge of welfare. I, just like Deaton, the Baker transplant, you know, I was on welfare myself, and I pulled myself up by hard working and paying my bills and doing the correct, lawful thing. Now, this electorate that we have, and it's fraud. It is. You have licenses given to illegals who are automatically enrolled in the system as being unenrolled voters. They're going to vote for these freebies that she keeps promoting, and it's going to crush all the working class here in Massachusetts and across the United States.
What do you feel about the union support of Elizabeth Warren?
Yeah, you know, these union workers are it's split. I'm in favor of the Teamsters, are a working class union, and they were great in supporting Donald Trump recently over this year.
Well, I mean, they went and they spoke at the RNC, but they did not come out and endorse Donald Trump. So he has not been endorsed by that union, but
Right.
a lot of union members
they are in
favor Republicans.
Like the United Auto Workers, for instance, that union. Now, why are these union workers? These union workers, are they getting paid? Because these union reps, the union president, is supporting Elizabeth Warren.
So, well, I mean, the basis of it is union workers pay the dues. They have no say over where the dues go, especially for the political arms. But what my question is union leadership is very much behind Elizabeth Warren. Have you reached out to the unions of Massachusetts to sit down and discuss with what their needs are?
No, I haven't been able to.
Okay, because that's something that I would think someone that would be running for U.S. Senate would, seek out the various stakeholders.
That is definitely an impactful thing.
Right.
It's who's getting paid off of these endorsements. You endorse me, you're going to get X amount of dollars per shipment that we send out. It's
Well, I mean, I think that's something that is separate from running for office and being endorsed. The question is, because, you know, there's obviously, we don't know, we have not seen any type of evidence of payoffs. So that's something that I believe we need to stay away from. That's just my opinion, unless someone has absolute proof. But the question is, the question is that,
we can all speculate.
right. But I mean, the everyday unenrolled voter that's saying, I don't like Elizabeth Warren, and I have 3 candidates here that's running as a Republican. Who's going to stand out to me to vote for them, and why? And I guess that's what I'm trying to say is, what is your platform?
Why should people vote for you over Elizabeth Warren? That's the question.
Okay. One.
And how many, we have 4 minutes?
Okay.
You have 3 minutes.
Okay, 3 minutes. Vote for me over Elizabeth Warren for the working class citizens of the state and for the country. Why? Because I will provide absolute transparency on what is trying to be presented in Congress over those purse strings. You cannot be giving away the hard-earned money to other agencies before the people. If you start diminishing the working class income, these people that are actually trying to work for their money, they're working for a living, their money needs to come back to them. Say $10, you're going to tax it, and they're only getting $1 out of every 10. That is not sustainable.
All right, Aaron, where do we find you? Where are you on social media? And how can people help with your campaign or your write-in candidacy? You have a minute.
My website is Packard, PACKARD 4. That's the number 4. USSenate.com. Packard 4 USSenate.com. My write-in information is 480 Elm Street, Fitchburg. Make sure you have a black pen and you fill in the oval on the ballot. I am on Facebook and I am on X, formerly known as Twitter. And thank goodness for Elon Musk for bringing free speech back.
Amen. What's your handle on Twitter or X?
It's Aaron Packard 1.
And that's AARON?
Yes.
And quickly, you said that you are a veteran. Did you serve during a wartime?
No, I did not. I actually served just when the filthy Clintons were elected.
Well, Aaron, I want to say thank you so much for coming on to,
thank you
talk
very
with your
much.
campaign about, to the Red Whine and our listeners.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
we wish you the best of luck. We are looking for the same things you're looking for, is transparency and accountability in fiscal restraint. So we thank you very much. And
100% truth and justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you check in with us sometime after the elections to give us a little bit more of your perspective as a candidate in the federal government?
Yeah, absolutely. You
Fabulous.
know, I'm looking forward to the results of the primary. So.
All right. Well,
Thank you very
one step
much.
at a time. Thanks so much. That's Aaron Packard. You can get him at Packard 4, the number 4, USSenate.com. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And you just heard Aaron Packard, who is another candidate running against Elizabeth Warren for the U.S. Senate seat in Massachusetts. We're going to be bringing you the third candidate, Robert Antonellis. We are going to have to kind of do this a little bit differently because we weren't able, due to the thunderstorms, to get the video over. So we're going to be playing it through the phone. So bear with us as we cue it up. And here we go. And I was wondering, we can call you Bob, right?
Yep.
Could you give us a little bit of information about yourself, why you're running, why you feel you're the best person to take on Elizabeth Warren?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, my name is Bob Antonovich. You already got that. I've been living in Massachusetts for over 40 years. I've loved this state, and I really hate what's happening to this state. And I want to step in and be the America First candidate, which I am. As far as on the ballot is concerned, there's 3 of us on the ballot, and I'm the one. At a recent debate on WRKO, we were all asked, "Who are you? Are you voting for Donald Trump on election day, which is November the 5th?" And of course, I said, "Yes, I am. Why wouldn't I? Of course I will." And I'm a big supporter of America First. And my two opponents both said no. They were not going to vote Donald Trump. And they had, their kind of complex reasons for why they were not willing to do so. But that kind of sent a shockwave through, through WRKO. The reason I'm running is because I bring a new dimension to the race in the fact that I am an America First candidate, and that I'm fighting for a strong border. And I'm doing it the way Donald Trump intends to have a strong border. Build the wall, remain in Mexico, mass deportations. I'm fighting for inflation reduction, which, to be honest with you, to get to prices that are low, once again, you actually have to have price deflation, but that's another subject. And I'm the one who's not only just talking about the massive spending programs, which we're spending money on nothing. That drives up inflation, of course, as you know, but so doesn't the price of fuel, which is skyrocketing. So you need Donald Trump's agenda, which is drill, baby, drill, America as an independent energy source, which he's already described it as something that's going to create a massive number of jobs as we begin to export and export and export. And so, I could talk all day about the reasons why I want to beat Elizabeth Warren, but the key issues that I'm not hearing from the other candidates at all. See, they do talk about these topics at a high level, but they don't. When you drill down, you realize they're not America First. So that is a problem. When Donald Trump wins, is that you want to have a senator in the Senate that's going to be working with Donald Trump and not against him. But when it comes to Elizabeth Warren, there's a lot of culture issues, social issues that nobody ever addresses, and she just kind of skates away.
And what are some of those things, Bob? What are some of those issues that you're talking about?
Yeah, there's some key issues on. See, my big thing is going to be America First, which I talk about. Massachusetts First, which I'll talk about later. Womanhood First. That's what I want to talk about right now. Those are the social issues. Womanhood is under attack, grave assault from all directions, and that includes Sharia law, the jihad, which considers a woman's feelings, her hopes, and her aspirations really to have a value of zero. But for them to actually be able to say that a woman shouldn't be able to go to school past the age of 6th grade is a prison sentence to guarantee that she's going to be a slave.
So let me ask you this question. Are you aware of any states right now that are putting Sharia law above U.S. laws and of any 6th grade students, U.S. citizens? Because I'm asking this because I want to focus on the difference between you and Elizabeth Warren. I don't know enough that Elizabeth Warren supports Sharia law. I think in order for Sharia law to even take effect in this country, in my eyes, it's not going to happen. Are you talking about behind doors Sharia law or? What exactly are you talking about when it comes to Elizabeth Warren and Sharia law?
Okay, well, yeah, see, what that is, the reason why I bring that up is because it's a hot button issue. There are parts of Minneapolis, I think.
It's actually Detroit. It's the Detroit area, but where they do have it's Dearborn, Michigan, to be exact. But again, um, you know, in Massachusetts, are you aware of that happening anywhere in Massachusetts?
No, I'm not. Thank you for pointing that out. The issue is she's anti-Israel, and she stands up to support, what amounts to jihad in the Middle East, and the way she, reaches out, supports the radical protests and so forth, which got that president, if you remember, fired from a couple of different institutions, learning institutions, were fired because they. So anyway, what I'm saying is, it's a hot button issue. It's a social issue, and the reason that that's why I say it first is because the second one that connects to it is transgenderism, which, in a sense, there's a lot of similarity between transgenderism, which really truly puts a value again of zero on a woman's rights. If you can say that, the clothing that she wears is the only thing that makes her a woman, it's a pretty shocking statement. So that's why I led with the Sharia law. That's a hot button that would get them to really freak out, which is a good thing, because what it does is when the radical left and the squad freak out about such a discussion, they divide. They show normal Americans the Democrats really are, and they're closet jihadis, if you want to know my opinion. But so.
Let me just bring you back to Massachusetts a little bit, and let's talk a little bit about what policies you don't agree with Elizabeth Warren, what policies you would change or recommend, and why you over Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, okay, well, she is one who really stands up against free speech. She really stands up against the right of gun ownership, and that's a big issue with me is Second Amendment rights, and I'm actually calling for constitutional carry in all 50 states and U.S. territories. And these are hot button issues that Elizabeth Warren she's always on the wrong side of what Americans really want, as far as Massachusetts becoming a sanctuary state. She's always on their side when the vast amounts of money are being spent of ours, putting our state potentially in bankruptcy. Into bankruptcy, $1 trillion here, actually $1 billion next year, and I've heard as much as $5 billion will be in the hole.
Now, are you saying that, just to bring you down to Massachusetts levels here, are you insinuating, or can you provide us any sort of documentation where you're saying that you believe Elizabeth Warren is bankrupting Massachusetts? Is that, for clarity, is that what you're saying?
Well, what I'm saying is that she's an enabler when it comes to the governor, and how she has helped to create this crisis that the state is in, where different institutions are closed down, taken, like in Roxbury, taken from the children, or a veterans hospital taken over, and where they move in illegal aliens into these institutions. She's quiet. And
well, I guess what my question when it comes to that is Maura Healey petitioned the federal government for federal dollars to help offset what Massachusetts was spending, and then it was apparent that Elizabeth Warren did not do anything to assist the state of Massachusetts. She kind of was like missing or abdicated her her role as the U.S. Senator to get the money towards the state, which is, more, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Maura Healey shouldn't have requested it at all anyways, because they named themselves a sanctuary state. So, I don't think that's a big comparison in my opinion, but as an independent voter, for example, that has, beliefs on both sides, how would you speak to them and convince them that they should be voting for you?
Well, the key metric, I think, for any independent voter would be cost of food, cost of fuel, access to housing, and not being priced out of the market, access to their rights. There's a terrible bill that's coming through the MBTA program, and it's called the 3A project, where they're going into hundreds of communities, and they're actually seizing the land. From what I understand, I haven't looked into it deeply, but it's the MBTA program where there's public housing that are being decreed, that a certain percentage of the land for each town needs to be
Bob,
designated.
as a part of the U.S. Senate, you understand, of course, that Congress carries the power of the purse, which is the ability to tax and spend public money for the national government. So are you saying that Elizabeth Warren is misappropriating funds, or that she's just not advocating for what the average Americans want her to advocate for? And what would you do better?
Yeah, I'm sorry, it kind of broke up a little bit.
So-
Could you just repeat that whole
Sure.
question?
So my statement was Congress carries the power of the purse, which is the ability to tax and spend public money for national government. But it means that it can also block activity by refusing to authorize public fundings for agencies. So what has Elizabeth Warren funded that you disagree with, and what would you do different?
Well, I'll tell you something. One of the efforts that I disagree with John Payton involves that border bill, which was a gargantuan amount of money to be spent on the border, and it's not most of it was going to go to the endless war in the Ukraine. So Ukraine endless wars are certainly right there in the list of things that Elizabeth Warren has spent on. COVID money that was overspent. There were a couple of trillion. There was like a third tranche of huge amounts of money that went out because of COVID, and it was already overspent, by the way. There was already too much spending on COVID because the solutions were not really good solutions. But then it continued with this third tranche of trillions of dollars that were spent, and she will say, she signed on that.
All right, so if a senator carries more power than a regular individual, how would you represent a majority of people in Massachusetts that may be split between, quote, Baker Republicans or Trump supporters or independents that take pieces of the Baker Republicans that they like and pieces of the Trump supporters? How do you hope to harness that energy of the Baker Republicans, the Trump supporters, and independent voters to put you at the head of the ticket against Elizabeth Warren? What is your platform that you're putting forward to people, and the change that you'll be that Elizabeth Warren has not been?
Well, some of the issues that I've talked about, but one that is huge right now is wind farming technology. Not technology, the rollout of wind farms in all U.S. territorial waters need to be closed immediately. We need to stop that effort. We need to end these wars, the wars that continue. And I do want to say I'm a big supporter of Israel.
I also know that you cannot fight your way to peace. So I do want to see in the Middle East, and that comes through change in Washington, D.C., where there's too much radicalism that allows for these vast, that enables Iran to become so powerful. As you know, what Joe Biden has done shortly after becoming president is.
But let's bring it back to you, Bob. Why are you, Robert Antonellis, running for U.S. Senate against Elizabeth Warren? Why are you a better candidate than Elizabeth Warren?
Well, because what she does is she works in, with these radical leftists.
But let's talk about you. What are you, not her, what are you going to do to try to affect change?
What I will do is negotiate, and I will I will work with people on both sides of the aisle. And yes, I can work with people that are, whether you're a Trump supporter or Baker supporter, it doesn't matter to me, because I will consider everyone in the state to be my constituent, and I will look for a solution that makes the state happy. And so that comes through discussion and negotiations.
So you're saying that you would do it through diplomacy, which I'm asking are you suggesting that Elizabeth Warren isn't diplomatic enough to make these issues come to light, or is she just totally against it? And I want to just back up a little bit. You said that you would negotiate and work with people on both sides. In both sides, I'm assuming you're saying in Massachusetts would be the Baker Republicans, the Trump supporters, and the independents. And then you added, but it doesn't matter. And I just want to back up, because your platform is that it does matter that people support Trump. So if you could just define for me why, in your mind, you believe that makes you a standout candidate against Elizabeth Warren.
Well, okay, I do believe that the Trump agenda is the America First agenda, and I believe that it is what America needs. But I believe that there are a lot of attacks that happen against the agenda, and they make it personal, and they make it complicated. They complicate it in the media intentionally, and I think it requires someone that can stand up and actually talk to the media and explain what needs to be done. But as far as Elizabeth Warren is concerned, she stakes out the most radical positions. That's just what she does. She stakes out the most radical positions, and then she sticks to that. And it's
okay. So let's talk about her radical positions and the ones that you the ones that you disagree with specifically.
Yeah, she is.
So you're saying she's basically a panderer. What I'm understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, are you suggesting that Elizabeth Warren is pandering to the leftist ideology of gender and political identities in order to usurp the rights and the will of the majority in Massachusetts?
Yeah, I would say that absolutely happens on a whole host of issues, because gender ideology is a big one, where she will come and she'll be looking to see a victim, and she finds a victim, and she will fight to prevent let's say parent rights. Parents have rights.
So you're saying that she's a victim sympathizer, and that she uses victims or people who identify as victims to promote her agenda by having people that are dependent upon the government keep them independency generationally. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, yeah, but when it comes to, let's just talk about parents' rights. She is against parents' rights. She wants it to be the school and the administration that educates, your children, our children, and she does not. So she stands against parents' rights, and she will use examples, she'll call it discrimination.
So you're an advocate for parents, which I'm leaning would be an advocate towards the educational system, perhaps sticking to education and not political solutions. So do you agree with Trump's agenda of eliminating the Department of Education and relegating those responsibilities back to the states?
Oh, I absolutely do. I would say definitely the Department of Education. It might be that there's some things that it does. If you look hard enough, there might be 5 or 10% of it, that's actually useful. But for the most part, I would definitely say cancel the Department of Education. I feel similarly with the ATF, alcohol, tobacco, firearms, which has this habit of pushing what the Supreme Court has declared to be unconstitutional. So the ATF is similar, but when it comes to parents' rights, if they put a daughter on the bus and her name is Jill, they don't want to have John, come off the bus and looks a lot like Jill. You know what I mean? They don't want to send their children to school to be changed in like with their gender identity.
So you want parents to have more of an input and more oversight over their child's education. Do you believe that there are people who, there's a lot of people that espouse interest in doing such things, and we have to motivate those people. So how do we motivate people to vote for Bob Antonellis over Elizabeth Warren?
Well, that's one right there, is to make people that care about family rights and parents' rights aware that I'm the choice over Elizabeth Warren. There's plenty of people that in the state of Massachusetts that believe this right. Now, there's another social issue that's kind of interesting, and that is something that I call, there's a statue in the Boston Common, which you've probably heard of. It's called the Embrace, and it's supposedly in...
Oh, I know yes, the Martin Luther King statue.
That's right.
It kind of looks like, I don't want to say it on air, but you know what
I know exactly what you mean. And kids tell their parents, "Mom, isn't that a blank?" And then mother says, "Yes, it is."
So, Bob, the framers of our, the founding fathers of our country and our Constitution, they created the Senate to protect the rights of individual states and safeguard minority opinions in the government. Do you believe that the minority opinion of governments are overriding the majority of opinions of citizens?
Oh, I think absolutely something like that is exactly happening, because the people that I talk to, and I even have a flyer I made up on this thing, because I call it the Embrace Disgrace, because it's a slap in the face of anyone who thought well of Martin Luther King Jr. By the way, he was a Republican. He was a Christian Baptist minister. He was a husband. He was a father. And so people that I've talked to, it's not a huge campaign issue, but the point of the matter is it's something that it would be very hard for her to stand in front of a black audience and say, it's art.
Are you saying that Martin Luther King was a Republican?
Yes, he was.
But I think the question was not necessarily talking about the sculpture. Obviously, the sculptor had
A different vision.
creative license, if you will. Obviously,
Yeah,
not
but
thinking of it.
it was creative license, but it went too far.
But I think the question is, what do you plan to do different than Elizabeth Warren by protecting the rights of the minorities and life and liberty for everybody, but particularly the minorities?
Well, okay, so let's use the statue as an example. So what I would like to do, it's just sort of one of the many things, but this is a good example of putting the power into the hands of the people, because people walk by that statue, it's a disgrace. It is bad for tourism. It's a laughing stock. And so fine, let's have artists from around the world make up their own vision of what it should be looking like, and have people vote on it. And when there's enough votes for a different statue, well, then you take the old one, you melt it down, and you build a new one. And now what you have is something that's going to be magnetic. It's going to bring people in from all over the state, all over New England, all over the country.
But changing a statue is not protecting the rights of minorities. My question was, how do you plan to differentiate yourself from Elizabeth Warren by protecting the rights of minorities?
Okay, well, here's how. You stop isolating and having racist policies. A lot these spending bills that have caps and requirements, they're all racist. That's a fact. And these schools, now there's been Supreme Court judgments about this. Schools are now having to roll back their discriminatory, acceptance plans and so forth. There are even universities that are having black-only dormitories. They claim it's to help something, but the reality is it's discriminatory, and so there should be really no mention of race in these huge government spending bills, because what they're doing is they're systematizing, if you want to call that, racism, and spending a vast amount of money for people, and that becomes part of the victimhood mentality, which is at the heart of so much.
So are you saying that Elizabeth Warren subjugates minorities for the advancement of her career, and you would not do that?
That is absolutely correct.
All right, we have 3 minutes.
Not
Right. So the question was, if I'm interpreting what you're saying, is I interpret what you're saying as Elizabeth Warren subjugates minorities and keeps them in victimhood in order to put forth her political agenda, which brings her millions of dollars to get elected, because people who say that money doesn't matter in elections are, misguided, and a lot of these people are purchased. So are we to ameliorate this issue with term limits? Or if we don't have accountability with the electorate, which is the people that elected Elizabeth Warren?
All right, you're going to have me repeat that, but I heard you say term limits. But let me just, just repeat that final piece.
Well, I don't know the final piece I said, but what my point was is, are you suggesting that you are a better candidate for Elizabeth Warren for minorities because Elizabeth Warren subjugates minorities into victimhood by using the power of the purse to put the money into these particular areas where there may not be advantages for minorities?
I absolutely agree with that.
Okay, now do you agree with term limits? Do you think we should have term limits? If you agree, why would you agree? And what do you think an acceptable term limit would be for a 6-year incumbent of Congress?
Well, see, term limits are a separate topic.
I understand it's under Article 5, but that's the question on the table. The table is, do you believe in term limits? And a U.S. Congress sits for 6 years. So the question is, do you agree with term limits? And what is an appropriate term limit when you have a 6-year, a 6-year term?
Right. What I would say is that term limits, I agree with the concept. We got to get new blood in there. We have to get people that we like in there that are good. But at the same time, the problem with term limits as a sledgehammer is that we're going to truncate the training process, the learning process, because,
Well, Bob, that's why I asked you. That was the caveat to my question is, 1, do you believe in term limits? So that's yes or no. And the second part of that question is, with a 6-year term, what do you believe in order to counterbalance corruption? How long should someone be allowed to serve in Congress? Is it 2 terms? Is it 12 years? Is it 3 terms, 18 years?
See, the problem is there's no guarantee that the next person you bring is more corrupt. That's the problem.
So you don't believe in term.
Because we see Nancy Pelosi doing it.
Yeah, but Bob, let me just let me get you.
I'm just gonna ask you, and this is a yes or no question. Okay? The US Senate seat is a 6-year term. Okay? And yeah, and I know you can talk about, fighting corruption or whatnot. The question is, do you feel there should be term limits, whether it's one term of 6 years, two terms of 12 years? Because Senate is a 6-year term. So the question is, do you feel there should be term limits for the Senate?
I don't really see that as a. I think that's not a bad idea, but I'm not really a big. I think the term limit plan is a populist plan. Is popular, but it's not going to solve the corruption. It's just a Band-Aid, and it's going to.
Okay, so you want my opinion, okay? You have somebody that's like Chuck Schumer, who's been in there for multiple decades, and you don't think term limits would be appropriate for someone like him? Or you don't think term limits would be appropriate for someone like Elizabeth Warren, who's also been in there for extremely, 3 terms?
No, I totally agree. But,
so then, yes, you are stating there should be.
What about Newt Gingrich or Jim Jordan? Like, how long have they been? Like, they would have been truncated. That's the problem. You lose the ability to have somebody become a real.
You can't pick and choose who's going to be
Your representative
for term limit. It is the voters of that state that make that determination. You might not like that they're from those states, but they're the ones that make that determination. And if you change that, you disenfranchise voters, which I believe is not something that you would ever consider doing.
No, of course not.
Right.
But if you do a cookie cutter, it's going to be the same process.
I'm not saying doing a cookie cutter. I'm asking you a specific question. It's a yes or no question. Should there be term limits? It's a yes or no question.
At this point in time, I'm going to say no.
Okay.
Because it's a populist plan. The founders built it to two bodies, 6 years versus 2 years, and I don't think there's no guarantee that the term limit is going to fight corruption. So I'm not going to be.
So my idea of term limits is there's so much. Sorry, we have a helicopter landing here. The term limits, 6 or 12 or 18. And sorry if you can't hear us. It looks like we may have a helicopter landing here. In Cutty Hawk. I hope it's just an exercise. I apologize, Bob.
No worries.
We are, Diane and I are on the island of Cutty Hawk. So I think I see term limits as a way to limit someone's political influence over a 30-year period. Someone like Biden, someone like Nancy Pelosi, now whether they're good or bad, we don't get to choose, but there is a line in the sand that we have to draw, as far as I think. So, I'll turn it back to you. You have 2 minutes to tell us about your campaign, where we can find you, where people can donate, and your social media accounts, and any last-minute statements you want to make. You have a minute.
Okay, yeah. So you can go to my website, bobforma.com, and that's a good place to, give us, if you want some alerts, I can notify you of activities. You can certainly make a donation there as well. You can request a sign. And I do hope you'll pick Robert Antonellis on September the 2nd, September the 3rd, to go after Elizabeth Warren, because we do need to replace her, and we need a good conservative and somebody who supports the Trump agenda, because I think it's going to be a big problem having someone go at. I think anyone who doesn't unify the Republican Party is going to have a hard time beating Elizabeth Warren. So I think that I have a unique ability to, as the only Trump supporter on the ballot, to be able to unify the party and have it be, to make a strong statement against Elizabeth Warren and to send her packet.
Well, Robert, we hope that you can unify the party, and that is something that I think we all hope we can, and we all hope, I hope that Republicans can, you don't have to agree with 100% of what a candidate says. And you have to, kind of pick through, is it a majority? Do you support the majority? And you stand for free speech. You stand for parental rights. It sounds like you stand for fiscal conservancy, but you're not sure on term limits. You believe in schools, educating and not indoctrinating. And did I summarize that properly for you?
Well, mostly, but unfortunately, I swear over a hill, and could you repeat the last sentence?
Sure. So what I interpret from the interview that we just had is that you believe in parents having rights in education, and that perhaps if the Department of Education was eradicated, that would probably go back to the states, which states would have greater authority over what was taught. You believe in fiscal conservancy. You're American first. You're veteran first. And that you are against Elizabeth Warren's gender ideology, and that you believe in individual freedoms, and that is one of the reasons why you want people to vote for you, because you are an American first candidate, veterans first, and you want any tax dollars to be spent on citizens first. Does that wrap up what your campaign is saying?
I would say you covered it pretty well. Yeah, there's more than that, of course, but that's okay. You covered quite an awful lot of it, and that was good. It was a good interview.
And really quickly, you're an engineer.
That's right. I'm an engineer. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a lobbyist. I'm not a politician. And I'm certainly not Elizabeth Warren. They are really good at breaking things. And I'm an engineer, which means I can put things together. That's why I'm convinced I'm a good negotiator. I can get a success, a lot of people to come to the America First agenda, not by using a sledgehammer at all, but by conversation and by giving and taking. That's what you can't have a job as significant as U.S. Senator without being able to give and take and to work with lots of different opinions and stakeholders.
All right, well, everybody, that was Bob Antonellis, and he is running for U.S. Senate. And you can find him on Bob4, the number 4, MA.com. And he hopes to unify the party. We hope you unify the party, too. We wish you the best of luck. And would you be willing to come on with us after the election to give us your perspectives of being a congressional candidate?
Of course, sure.
And that was Robert Antonellis running for state senate. So we were lucky tonight. We heard from 3 out of the 4 candidates. And if Rick, if you're still here after
Helping us with the island debacle and the nightmare of trying to transmit on an island.
New phone. Who dis?
We would love it if you were here, Rick.
Did you hear
I'm
the
here.
helicopter? I mean, I thought it was landing on top of this place.
I know. I still don't know what happened. I don't know if it was a
was a
search and
Coast Guard.
rescue
It was
or
Coast
if
Guard.
it was just an exercise.
The Coasties were coming by to say hi.
I know.
I know, right? Damn coasties. God bless those rescue swimmers. No
They're
thanks.
going out with the sharks. Forget that stuff.
So, Rick, do we have any time to go over with you to get your perspective of the other candidate that refused to be on our show? Or are we
Sure,
out of time?
I don't know. You guys, we can go a little bit over. It's not a big deal. I'm not doing anything after this anyway. I'm going to bed. So
If Diane would give me her
I'm
glasses.
not my glasses. You have 8 million
I
pairs of
cannot
glasses.
read.
Whoa.
I can't use your glasses either. All right.
I buy her 2 boxes of glasses and she can't find a pair and she wants to take them off my face.
So Rick, obviously you were in law enforcement much like I was. And so I want to read you, this is a book written by the U.S. Senate candidate. So someone who wants to be elected to office, someone who believes that they are truthful and they are worthy of being able to declare war on another state. So he says his sister had fallen into addiction and he was in the Marine Corps. So I'm going to read you an excerpt from his book. It says Tina had fallen into the trap of heroin before her 12th birthday. Due to her constant battle with addiction, Tina was in and out of the home. One time, EMTs revived her. The second time, it was my brother Todd who brought her back. Now, my experience with heroin is you don't bring anybody back from a heroin overdose unless you have Narcan, and there was no Narcan at the time this book was written. So I find it odd that someone would say that one time an EMT revived their sister from an overdose, and the second time a civilian somehow revived this person from an overdose. He says that he watched her fight many times. She was 15 and fighting 20-year-old men. Okay, so what brother who's running for US Senate watches his sister fight 20-year-old men? That doesn't make any sense. He says, I was close to Tina when I was, a little kid, and I would never let her disrespect our mother. But then he tells a story of how his sister was drug addicted and he flew home from where he was stationed in Yuma, Arizona, as a Marine Corps prosecutor for the judge advocate general, which we still haven't found out because he didn't pass the Mass bar until 2004 and the Rhode Island bar until 2001, yet said that he prosecuted cartels between 1996 and
And I
1999.
think what we should state is the fourth candidate is John Deaton.
John Deaton. Oh,
Who
sorry.
happens to be the Mass GOP handpicked candidate. We
Yes.
suspect it's because he decided to pay for their rent.
Uh-oh. Lady?
Crypto
Hey,
a lot.
you're
John
back.
Deaton.
Yeah.
John Deaton is his name.
Did we lose connection?
For about 25 seconds, so I was starting to panic.
Oh, so his name is John Deaton, and he is the fourth candidate who wouldn't come onto our show. He has been pretty much handpicked and endorsed by the Mass GOP, which we know, obviously, of our discussions when Darylyn was running, is filled with Charlie Baker, Rhino, GOP people. He pretty much the Mass GOP gave agreements to all the candidates, pretty much saying we'll help you if you pay for our rent in Boston. He must have been the only one that signed it because obviously he's the handpicked choice. But anyways, he wrote a book, and as Darylyn had started explaining about his drug addicted sister, he was prosecutor for JAG, right? Was it JAG?
Or Jag in the Marine Corps?
JAG,
Well,
yeah.
he alleges that he was.
Yes. So Darylyn's going to read this excerpt, and she wants you to listen to it because it's mind-boggling once you hear it.
So page 47, it says, I flew home this weekend only telling my brother Todd. What happened next would cause Tina and I not to speak for several years. I arrived at my mother's home at 1 p.m. Tina was asleep on the couch. This is his drug addicted sister. Coming down from a heroin binge. She was coming down from a heroin binge. I walked to my mother's bedroom and told her no matter what happened, don't come outside of the bedroom until I said so. I said the same thing to my sister Michelle and the same thing to my brother Todd, who had picked me up at the airport. Now, Todd allegedly was enlisted or commissioned in the Air Force as well. He said, this is John Deaton, I grabbed a steak knife from the drawer and told Todd, do not open, do not peek through. There can be no witnesses. Now, this is someone who's a prosecutor for the United States Marine Corps, allegedly, who's telling his brother that he's about to commit a crime and that there shouldn't be any witnesses. Todd's face became pale. What the fuck are you doing? What needs to be done, brother? No matter what, don't open the door. I closed the door to the living room. I grabbed a chair and a wireless phone. I sat down in the front of the couch and placed the knife on my knee. I shook Tina to wake her. This is his sister. It took several minutes to wake her from her fog. When she woke, she said, what are you doing, John? I stared at her with a blank face, and she noticed the knife and the phone. Why would she notice the phone? And I think you would notice the knife. And she yelled out, what the fuck are you doing? She yelled, Mommy, Mommy. Yeah, that's doubtful. Tina started to get off the couch, and I violently pushed her down. Tina, if you get up, I'll put you through the fucking wall. I looked her dead in the eye now. You robbed your own mother at gunpoint with a loaded fucking gun and threatened her life. My fucking mother. Tina began to cry. What are you going to do with the knife, John? I shook my head and I told her, I love you, Tina. And then I took the knife and I sliced my left forearm open in 3 places. Blood splattered everywhere, including all over Tina's face. As she screamed in sheer horror, I dialed 911. My sister's high and she attacked me with a knife, and I told them to send the police and paramedics. When they arrived, everything aligned with my story. Now, of course, things aligned with his story because he was the one telling the story. And he was the one who was an attorney. He was the one who took advantage of his own sister. And he alleges that she went to prison. So, how is this unlike Karen Reed being framed for murder? This is someone who says that he was a Marine Corps officer commissioned as a judge advocate general to defend the Constitution of the United States, and he framed his sister.
So how do you think of that for the candidate running for office?
I they I
These
okay.
are his own
I
words, Rick.
I talk for a living, and I don't know what to say to that because that if that's in a published book, why is he not in jail?
Well, so then he says the police came and basically corroborated my story. They said that they were defensive wounds. Now, I don't know about you, but in order for blood to splatter in someone's face, which by the way reminds me of something totally different, as he said that when he got his divorce, he went on a sex crazed cocaine binge. So maybe he was watching porn and the splatter reference just seemed to like speak to him. But if you don't hit an artery, the blood does not splatter. All right. So he says, I explained that my sister needed to go to rehab and move out. And that's when she attacked me with a knife. I held my arm up to protect my face. Was she only going to stab you in the face? What if she stabbed you in the stomach? Where your hands in front of your face? So this is the story he told. The police determined my wounds were defensive in nature. Plus, I was a federal prosecutor, and the only other witness was a drug addict with multiple felonies under her belt, including felony assault. They arrested her. As a federal prosecutor living in Arizona, I knew that the state of Michigan could not subpoena me to testify. I knew without my testimony, the state of Michigan would have to eventually drop the charges. However, I also knew my sister would have to sit in jail for a month or two until her case would be dismissed. I don't know anybody that sits in jail for a month or
But
two.
first of all, I mean, to me, that's like false.
Accusation. He's
Yes.
framing her for a felony.
So how did he not get in trouble?
How does he not? How does the Board of Bar Overseers in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and any other state where he is licensed as an attorney determine that this is not misconduct, that he not only alleges is true, but published and is proud of it? That's misconduct as an attorney.
And that is who the Mass GOP has endorsed to run against Elizabeth Warren.
But Rick, you'll love this part. So this is how he justifies it. He says, as a federal prosecutor living in Arizona, now don't forget he flew to Michigan, I knew that the state of Michigan could not subpoena me to testify. So that's premeditation. I knew without my testimony, the state of Michigan would eventually have to drop the charges. Although I lied to police, I wasn't under oath, and I would never testify against my sister for something she didn't do. So even as a federal prosecutor with the right, he is sworn an oath to uphold the Constitution. He framed his sister and lied and admits that he lied. Rick, what's your response to that?
Filing a false police report is a crime one way or the other.
Well, he stabbed himself and called 911. He damaged government property himself as a Marine Corps prosecutor, allegedly, for the state of Arizona. He set up his sister and framed her for a crime that she didn't commit, of which her liberty and freedom was taken from her for, he alleges, 3 months under false accusations. How does the Mass GOP put forward this person as a candidate? And does character matter whatsoever? He said he needed 40 stitches. His brother Todd was allegedly a witness to it. And he says his brother Todd also tried to harden him by threatening to cook a dead puppy. I'm sorry, if the puppy's already dead, why do you need to cook it? This book makes no sense.
But the bottom line is like this is your typical like Democratic candidate that would
Right?
probably get elected.
Yeah. He says he's
I was gonna
he's
say, did Mass GOP hire the same people that vetted Walz for this guy?
I'm wondering.
I think what the Mass GOP, which is Amy Carnevale is the president and Judy Crocker is the vice president, they are, well, she's not the vice president, what is she called? The administrative, whatever the hell she is, administrative assistant, but they were up, Judy was up passing out stickers or whatever, or push cards for this guy who also says this is like such an insult to his wife and women in general that after his divorce, he went on a cocaine binged sex craze.
Kind of like I wonder if he was Hunter's best friend.
I mean, but who admits to such degenerate behavior in a book, which one can only believe that if you wrote it, that it's true, right? Because I mean, he wrote it in pages. This is what he wants, how he wants to um, be perceived. But in the front of his house is a Lincoln Continental. And that Lincoln Continental in that year was one of the most expensive cars going. And he alleges that at 14 years old, he put himself through private high school, and college, and then law school, but he was still poor.
Sure.
See what's
Sure.
going on? It's like we have 4 candidates in Massachusetts running. They each have all very different views on how they feel they can beat Elizabeth Warren. And 3 out of the 4 candidates, I think, have a far better shot than who the Mass GOP proclaimed was their anointed one, which was John Deaton, who stabbed himself in the arm to frame his sister.
And alleges that he used women and cocaine to somehow like hearken the blow of being divorced.
And he's paying the rent of the Mass GOP, which is the others refused, by the way, to pay the rent.
Well, it's,
I
it's
believe.
if he won, right? But that says one that the Mass GOP is bankrupt, and that they would somehow.
Kind of like a quid pro quo.
I don't know. It just
If you win and we help you win, you pay our rent.
like, I don't even care about that. But as a police officer, I mean, you know, Rick. I mean, what would you think about? I mean, he says that he was a special assistant to the United States Attorney for the District of Arizona and chief prosecutor at MCAS Yuma, Arizona, as a Marine. And he framed his sister. Allegedly, it's okay, I guess, if your sister's a drug addict, and you can punch her in the face and beat her up and frame her and put her in jail for allegedly 3 months as someone who's a lawyer. Oh, yeah.
Well, I
And
mean,
he also said he shot somebody. He doesn't know if he shot somebody. He shot someone, but doesn't know if he killed them. Like, this is who, are we this corrupt that we're going to take any schmo off the street who writes a book about, abusing women with cocaine and sex, shooting someone, punching his sister in the face, selling drugs, allegedly to buy his mother food stamps? Listen, you don't have to sell drugs to get food stamps. Okay, that's not how it works. You take the food stamps and you buy drugs with them. That's it. You get food stamps if you're poor. It doesn't make any sense. Like, this whole book doesn't make any sense.
Now Rick's like, I'm gonna have to go out and buy that book or read it online.
But he wrote this thinking it
I
was a good
wouldn't.
idea
I
to
wouldn't even
publish it.
get that from the library.
I mean, he says at the time that all this went down, like Kevin Hart, it's about to go down. I was a special United States attorney for the District of Arizona and chief prosecutor for MCAS Yuma, Arizona. I thought I had escaped the hood, but had I? Tina had desperate enough to rob her own mother, and I had been desperate enough to pick up that knife and draw my own blood. The spirit of the fight goes both ways. Harness it for good, harness it for bad, but in the end, maybe it's the other way around. When you've had to fight your whole life, the only thing you can do is keep fighting. So you're willing to frame your own family members, and we're supposed to elect you for U.S. Senate?
This sounds like
Woo!
a plot of a bad B movie.
It is. It
It
is.
does.
It is a bad B movie, and this is who the Mass GOP sycophants flocked to because he came to Massachusetts with, I don't know, $1.5 million, and they were more than willing to spend it on consultants, even if he loses. And he talks about himself in the third person. That's wrong.
That's not what John Deaton thinks.
It's not what John. Daryl and Ross doesn't think that.
He's old enough to know how well that worked for Bob Dole, right?
For Bob Dole.
Yeah. Bob Dole
Yeah.
lost.
But
Bob Dole
he's
lost
not a
an election.
Massachusetts resident, so he's from Rhode Island.
No, I got nothing. The only thing I can think of with everything this guy's spouting off is it reminds me of the tape that they found from Harris for a couple years ago, where she was talking about how as a prosecutor at a very young age, she realized she could change somebody's entire life with the stroke of a pen, and how much she liked that power.
Yeah. And this guy says this: when she called my mother a whore, I punched Tina in her mouth. Say it again, Tina, and I'll kick your ass. It was then that Tina knew the little brother she taught how to fight had grown up. Yeah, what a man you are, punching a woman in the mouth, you douche. At one point in our lives, Tina and I didn't speak for years. It involved my mother, of course. I was living in Yuma, Arizona on active duty as a lawyer in the Marines. I was working on a murder and rape case as a chief prosecutor for the Marine base,
And
effectively,
probably the perpetrator.
right? And I was the chief law enforcement officer for the base.
And yet he does that.
And yet he set his sister up, who had her liberty removed for 3 months, according to him. But we should vote for him.
Yeah. No, I'll pass. Thank you. Anyways, thank you, Rick, for humoring us.
Not a problem.
So, anyways, we're gonna sign off and hope everybody has a great week. We are off next week because it is the first week of the month. So, make sure everybody gets out and vote in your state's primaries if they're coming up. I'm sure there's a bunch going on out there. Not in my state. Oh wait,
And tune into KLRN Radio.
absolutely, and the Red Whine. So we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. Thanks.
Ain't no stop for me. Shadow Timberland.